Let's take a look at the sample page. I've got a snapshot loaded in. It sounds nice. It's a combination of the grain and sample engine. And I'm going to turn this off just so we can focus on the sample page. It's a vibraphone sample. So I'm going to click here to get to it. Now, first we have input mode. When we have hold first note, it's kind of like a monophonic mode where you can only play one note at a time, and the second note isn't heard until the first one is released. This mode gives us a standard polyphonic mode like we're used to, plus access to the arpeggiator feature. So here's the arpeggiator. We'll get back to this in a few minutes, but I want to just kind of go through a quick tour of the interface. This is all arpeggiator functions. Here we have the sample randomize function, and this is a really simple, fun, and creative and intuitive way to customize these instruments. So we have the option here to randomize the parameters only or also the source. So if I set it to parameters only, I'll roll the dice. And this is that same vibraphone sample. We see it here in the header. This randomization turned on the arpeggiator. Let's try it again. Again, arpeggiator with other parameters, filter modulation, filter, etc. Another variation. Now I can also randomize the source as well. We see it change here. Let's go again. Turn off the arpeggiator. Layer it with the grain. So right away, there's a new innovative sound. Randomizing both together. Let's turn that off. Okay, let's go with that. I'm going to leave that off. And we can layer it, of course. And there's some detuning going on due to some modulation. It's kind of interesting. So with this, we can see the waveform display, and we can also adjust the start position. And we can do it by moving this, and that dramatically changes the timbre. I can start it later. A little less of a sharper attack. So as I drag that, we see the start slider here, the offset slider, move as well. So these are two different ways of doing the same thing. Now you'll notice that the start position is being modulated, and we see here the offset for the start has some modulation. And if we click here, we'll see L1 is LFO1. And now if I switch this to the modulation section, we can see the LFO1 parameters here. There's the speed. It can be synced to tempo, to quarter notes. And it's using a triangle kind of wave, but we can change that. We can make it faster if we want. And that's a nice way to kind of modify the timbre of a sound, is by modulating the start position. Like that. And of course, we can get more depth with that. And we can go bipolar. And again, layered with the grain engine. So let me turn that back off. Continuing our tour, I just want to point out that some sources can only be played monophonically. And when we have sources like that, we'll see a little mono tag up here. So we have pitch. We can transpose this in semitones, which might work better in this range with the grain engine. And we also have fine tuning. And you'll hear that once the note is played, that can be altered. Whereas once this is hit, it only works with the note on, so it's kind of static. Let me command click to snap that back. And here, this is assigned with this randomization that we came up with to L2, which is LFO2. And we see that that's over here, and just a random assignment, but let's snap that to the center and dial some in. So we're getting some pitch fluctuations based on this LFO, which, depending what you're looking for, is an interesting way of using Ashlight. So we're getting some random pitch fluctuation, which is interesting. I'm just going to command click to snap that back. Now, another kind of standard modulation routing that's useful in Ashlight is to modulate the start position not only by LFO, but maybe by aftertouch. And by clicking on the matrix here, I can select aftertouch AT and then dial it up or down. And then when I press harder on my key, see as I press harder, it starts moving. I can go deeper, or I can go in the negative range, where it moves it back from the offset. So I think I'll move that earlier and put this positive. And then we can add some of the modulation to the tuning back. And here we see it set to a sine wave with a free trigger. We'll explore all these modulation parameters in more detail. And here we've got a secondary modulation set up with RND, which is a key random, and I can modulate the LFO for even more interesting variety. And again, I can command click to snap that back. Now I'm going to command click to reset the modulation depth to the tuning so there's none. I'm going to turn off the grain engine. We hear the timbre change because this is a multi-sample set. So each note I hit is triggering a different sample, but it's all at the same pitch. So it's cycling through a set of samples at whatever pitch I trigger with the keyboard. But if I turn key tracking off, it's going to always trigger the same pitch. You can see on the keyboard I'm hitting different notes. This is good for drum sounds, but with this on, it'll track the pitch of the keyboard. I'm going to end off here, and in the next videos, we'll look at the filter section and filter modulation, the arpeggiator, and the amp envelope.